What it was like recording the last two Guess Who albums with Burton Cummings. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Keep in mind, if you want to hear the entire interview, there'll be links in the description of this video. Also, this whole interview is based on a book, Domenic Troiano, His Life and Music. It's interesting that he see those last two Burton Cummings Guess Who albums. Believe it or not, that was the two first Guess Who albums I ever bought because of my age. Because I was in '75, I was 15.
Yep.
And I loved them, having known the hits, but not much else at that point from the Guess Who.
Yep.
Now it's my business to know. And I like those two albums an awful lot. It's interesting they say, and it's insinuated in the books, that a lot of people have said that was the start of the decline, even though Burton wanted to go out and do his solo albums. I was interested to see you guys say that. I thought first,
Your
Backyard. That's the one. I haven't heard it in years.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, that's going to happen because albums that don't make it here will end up sometimes over here. Yep. But I didn't know that.
Yep. I agree with you. Musically, the music on Flavors and Power in the Music, there's certainly nothing substandard about it. It was fabulous music. It was definitely a departure from what they had been doing with Randy Bachman and Kurt Winter. Randy Bachman, Kurt Winter, they were much more commercially oriented writers, and they wrote with Burton at the time. Jack Richardson, the producer of the Guess Who, gave a sort of a backhanded shot at Donnie one time in the studio, and Blaine Pritchard quoted him on this, and Jack said to Donnie, Donnie, you may be the finest guitar player in Canada, but you haven't got a commercial bone in your body. And I think there was a certain amount of truth when even Donnie admitted that. He knew that it was a departure, but there's no getting away from the music was good, and all of the Guess Who and Burton Cummings as well were fully invested. And they knew exactly what they were getting when Donnie joined the band. And they were like Burton and Donnie were joined at the hip for the next 15 months, touring and recording together, doing interviews, totally supportive. The bottom line was Burton wanted to relive or re-experience the level of success that the Guess Who had achieved with American Woman and Share the Land in 1970, because he hadn't, the subsequent albums just didn't do that. And although Flavors actually outsold the Guess Who albums that had just been done prior to that, Flavors and Power in the Music were nowhere near Share the Land or American Woman. And so from Burton's perspective, I think the experiment was over. But I think musically it was still great as a live unit. Bill Wallace and who's the bass player with the Guess Who, Gary Peterson, who played the drums, they both claim the Guess Who never sounded better in concert than when they were led by Domenic.
Yeah, Bill gave some interesting quotes, and he really pointed out the fact that he was intimidated, but they just brought it up a notch, right? I mean, that's what you want to do. So
yeah.
The Alex Lifeson thing, by the way. Yeah, I mean, it's strategically, I'm glad you put it right in the beginning with the picture, the fact that he was a teenager and he comes up to him and Domenic is just not, as you guys put it, not talking. Well, he put it, not talking down to him at all.
Alex was absolutely fabulous. And there was an obvious connection that we were aware of that story before we asked him, and Alex, of course, had sat on the Domenic Troiano scholarship fund, like he was one of the people choosing the recipients, and he also played with Domenic. They used to jam together at the Orbit Room in the later years, so he had a really they had a good friendship. And the other thing, my 29-year-old son said to me, Dad, if Alex Lifeson writes the foreword to this book, I'll buy a copy. So we figured we had to do that. But here's the thing: Frank was very good when he reached out to all of these folks for submissions. we reserved the right to edit, and it was absolutely necessary that we edit these submissions. Otherwise, there would have been so much repetition. It would have been maudlin, because people are pretty emotional about this. But Alex's submission, we did not change a word. We didn't need to. We had the same license. We could have if we'd wanted to, but it was perfect.
I love the story when Alex got a chance to see him years later and to remind him of that story.
Yeah.
Yes. I was there. I was at that event, and I didn't see them talking about that particular thing, but I did, I met them during the evening, and they were on the stage wailing. They played one or two songs together, and you haven't seen two better guitarists sitting on, well, I, in my humble opinion, two of the best Canadian guitarists sitting, one, the older wise man, and the other one, the younger one, who's had a tremendous international success, yet they were like blood brothers there. It was wonderful.
Oh, Frank, I find it interesting when I got to that point, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I read this last week, that, okay, Domenic buys a house, you go to LA to be with him, you want to help him renovate, you go in there, and he's playing with David Foster and Willie Weeks. And I mean, like, this is top shelf stuff here. Was he just rehearsing, or was this, did I remember it wrong? Were they in the studio?
They were putting together a few, well, I don't want to say a super group, but a fusion group. Yeah. And really based on the people that were there, it was a super group. And I didn't realize, here I am, I had already been there the previous 2 weeks before that, helping my brother. And then I drove down to Mexico. I went to Vegas, lost some money. And I went to San Diego Zoo and sat with the gorillas in their cage because I had lost money. No, I'm kidding. Anyhow, I finally did the rounds, and I finally came back, and there's my brother. I'm knocking on the door. The door was open. I go in, and my brother's in the basement, well, it was a split level, not a basement, but a lower area. And there's David Foster, who I had never met before. Willie Weeks, who I knew had been on the Tricky album, and what's his name? Kenneth Rice, Spider Rice, yeah. Great drummer. And I didn't realize I was in the company of some of the best musicians in the world. I was 22. I mean, whatever. I just didn't realize who I was with. And so they played for another hour. I went up, made myself a sandwich, and they played for another hour, rehearsed, I mean. And after they left, my brother said, "That's David Foster." And he said he's a keyboard prodigy. And I kind of went in one ear at the other. And then he said, "That's Willie Weeks," then he told me. And I didn't, Willie Weeks went on to play with Eric Clapton for 22 years in his band. Can you imagine? And then so, all of them. And of course, David Foster, I don't have to tell you. But, it's unfortunate. Well, I don't want to say it's unfortunate, but that's when the Guess Who got involved shortly after that. And after 2 months of rehearsing, or 2.5 months, he realized, well, anyhow, he had the offer. He didn't really want to, I'll be honest with you, he didn't really want to join the Guess Who. He thought they were a pop group, and he did a lot of soul, and that's with no disrespect to the Guess Who. They're a great band.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah,
a little bit.
So he called me a few times about it. Like later on, when I went back, he had the firm offer, and he said, "Frank, I'm really struggling with this," because he wanted to be with Foster and the other guys. But I guess the offer was so good, they offered him 25%, 50, the 50-50 writing, all that stuff, and it's just anyhow. He took that decision. And they really sweet talked. I mean, the manager called him 10 times. Burton called him repeatedly. Gary was kind of an old friend of his, the drummer. And he talked to him a few times, and he finally was convinced. And anyhow, he did it. And he had fun. It was, what? It was like a paid holiday for my brother, going first class. And he put a lot of effort into it. But it was a kind of a relaxing almost 2 years, 18 months, whatever it was.
The brand new book is by Mark Doble and Domenic Troiano's brother, Frank. Mark was actually a good friend of Dominic's. There'll be links in the description if you want to pick up the book. If you want to see the entire interview, there'll be links in the description as well. We'll have more from the pair in just a few days. Make sure you comment on our videos. Share our videos on social media. That's the biggest thing that helps us. Share, share, share. And of course, subscribe to our channel. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.